Daniel had never liked the far edge of the village. The houses there were older, leaning in strange ways as if the ground beneath them had shifted over time. Roofs sagged. Window frames warped. The paint on the walls peeled in long, curling strips that fluttered in the wind like dying leaves. When he was a child, he had been told never to wander too far toward the old road, but no one had ever explained why. It was one of those warnings that simply hung in the air, unspoken yet absolute. The night it happened was one of those evenings where the sky seemed too low, pressing down on the earth. A heavy mist rolled between the houses, swallowing the lamplight and making the familiar streets feel distant, detached. Daniel sat at the small table in his dim kitchen, a half-empty mug of tea cooling beside him, and tried to ignore the strange, prickling sensation that had settled in the back of his neck. Outside, the wind had died. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. And then, another sound. A whisper. It was so soft he almost convinced himself it had come from the wind, but the stillness outside left no room for doubt. He froze, head tilted, straining to hear. The whisper came again, drawn out, faint, but unmistakable. A voice. His name. Daniel. He pushed back from the table, his chair scraping against the floorboards. His pulse quickened, but curiosity pulled him to the window. He parted the thin curtain with 2 fingers and peered into the night. At first, he saw nothing but the drifting mist. Then, just beyond the glow of the nearest street lamp, a figure appeared. Small. Still. Watching. It was a boy, no older than 12, wearing clothes that looked several decades out of place, a frayed sweater with missing buttons, trousers too short at the ankles, bare feet pale against the dark earth. His hair hung in damp strands across his forehead. Daniel's breath caught. The boy raised one hand in a slow, deliberate motion and then pointed toward the old road. The gesture was simple, but something about it tightened the knot in Daniel's stomach. He knew every face in the village, and this boy was not one of them. He let the curtain fall, stepping back from the window. His mind raced, should he call someone? But before he could decide, the whisper came again, this time closer, right outside the house. Daniel. The sound slid into him like a cold blade. He grabbed his coat, pulling it over his shoulders, and stepped out into the night. The chill wrapped around him instantly, damp and heavy. The street was deserted. The mist coiled at his feet as he walked toward the edge of the village. The boy was waiting where the cobblestones ended and the dirt road began. He stood perfectly still until Daniel drew near. Then he turned without a word and began walking, his bare feet making no sound on the packed earth. Daniel followed, his own footsteps seeming too loud in the thick silence. They passed the last of the houses, where the land opened into tangled fields. The moonlight here was weak, shrouded by the mist, and shadows moved in the corners of his vision, quick, darting shapes that vanished when he tried to focus on them. The boy never looked back. His pace was steady, unhurried, as if he knew Daniel would follow no matter what. After what felt like an eternity, they reached it. The house. It sat alone at the bend of the old road, a rotting skeleton of a building. Its roof sagged under the weight of years, shingles missing in wide patches. The windows were black, their glass clouded or broken entirely. The wooden siding was warped and grey, splitting in long, jagged lines. Daniel had seen it from a distance before but had never dared to approach. The place was the subject of too many whispered stories, about lights in the windows when no one lived there, about voices calling from the darkness. The boy stopped at the front gate, which hung crooked on rusted hinges. Without turning, he pushed it open and stepped through. The metal groaned in protest. Daniel hesitated, every instinct telling him to turn back. But the boy was already at the front door, pushing it open with a slow, grinding creak. A smell rolled out, damp wood, mold, and something faintly metallic beneath it. The inside was worse. The floor sagged in places, the boards warped and soft underfoot. Cobwebs draped the corners like funeral cloths. The walls were lined with peeling wallpaper, its faded patterns barely visible beneath layers of dust. The boy moved ahead, gliding rather than walking, and Daniel followed. His breath came shallow as he glanced into the rooms they passed, each one empty, though it felt as if someone had only just stepped out. In one, a chair lay tipped on its side, a teacup shattered on the floor beside it. In another, a single shoe sat in the middle of the carpet, its laces untied. They reached a narrow staircase at the end of the hall. The boy climbed without pause, and the boards groaned under Daniel's weight as he followed. Upstairs, the air was colder, heavy with the smell of dust. The boy led him to the last door at the far end of the hall. He stopped there and turned for the first time since they had left the village. His eyes met Daniel's, and for a heartbeat, Daniel thought he saw something moving behind them, a shadow sliding just out of sight. Then the boy stepped aside and motioned toward the door. Daniel's hand trembled as he reached for the tarnished brass knob. The metal was icy, and for a moment he felt as though it were pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat. He turned it and pushed the door open. The room beyond was small, almost bare. The only piece of furniture was an old, full-length mirror standing against the far wall. Its frame was ornate but cracked in several places, the wood splintering. The glass itself was cloudy, the surface marred by faint streaks and spots. Daniel stepped inside, drawn toward it. His reflection stared back, but the glass seemed to warp slightly, bending his features in subtle, unsettling ways. He could swear that the shadows in the corners of the reflection were moving. The boy's voice came from behind him, low, almost a whisper. "Look closer." Daniel did. And as he leaned toward the glass, his reflection smiled.